very shortly.
Well, like I said, we had more than 100 people at least signing up, and we'll see how many we will turn out to be. But the beauty of it is that everyone in the whole world can join this, and not just physical in Oslo. I have with me today Juliana Ciarlini from OutSystems, who will tell us a bit about UX and UI design. And also my colleague Carina Boom, who's a senior consultant in our consulting, who will tell us a bit about the remote agile development, which is quite, I guess, quite a hot topic as such in these COVID-19 times. There's only 13 players in our Kahoot. I'll let you guys, I'm not quite sure if it's possible to jump in when we start. Now we're up to 15.
But you'll lose out.
You won't win.
So,
yeah, you don't need the app, just kahoot.it.
Yeah.
So basically afterwards, when we start, we'll have the 2 sessions, approximately half an hour each. We do a small Q&A after each session, and my colleague Karen will also monitor the chat, so please enter any questions in there, and we can have a larger Q&A session towards the end. I think we'll just start with the Kahoot now. I think the questions are somewhat relevant to both Norway and OutSystems. So I'll press the start button and we'll see how it goes. So it's fancy. Should I have some music, I guess? So are you ready for this? And also be aware speed is of essence here when you answer. Okay, there is not everyone is ready, but let's continue anyway. So when is Norway's Constitution Day? Anyone know?
No,
I have no idea.
This is actually a picture of Bryggen, which is in Bergen, where Avo's main office is, and I'm from. And this is a nice day.
Yeah.
By the sea.
So probably June.
Yeah, probably
June
summer.
is.
Oh my.
It's a nice.
It's May.
Yeah.
Oh, I put the correct answer.
Yeah. 17th of May. It is, and we just had it, and this year it was a bit special. Normally it's a big kind of celebration and a party, but this year everyone had to stay at home, and there was more of a TV session around it.
Okay.
OutSystems was founded in Portugal. If anyone get this wrong,
yeah.
I think we.
Boy.
Sanchez is doing well. Now, multi-select. Points times 2. What 2 answers are principles included in the Agile Manifesto? Now, this is a tricky one, maybe.
It's good that you have a little bit extra time to guess this one.
Okay. Well, not too bad. Not too bad. And there's a change. SJD. Okay. No need to answer this time, it says. Let's dive into some technical challenges. Scaffolding. What is it? analyze the code step by step, allows the creation of pages with greater speed, generates templates with fictitious data or whatever, allows applications to be deployed between environments. Or something you put outside your house if you want to get up on your roof or paint. Almost everyone got that right. And we still have the same in the lead.
SJD is pretty good.
SJD, yeah. So 2 last questions, still a lot of points to be collected. Now this is also maybe a hard one, who knows? Which of the following items cannot be entered as a destination for buttons and links? Web screen, screen action, web lock, or none of the options is correct.
I thought this was 2 answers again. Oh my god. Anyway. Almost. And well, SJD is still in the lead. Last question, I think. No, second to last. The image shows a query for all the records in the tickets table. Is it true? Is it false? It's true. And let's see. Oh, SJD, maybe you answered that wrong. Or Lara's in the lead. 9 out of 9. Last chance. I am interested to learn more about design and remote agile development for OutSystems. And I would hope that there's a lot of yeses here. Yes, indeed. What was the question? I don't get it. Or I randomly entered the Zoom call, but now I'm interested. Well, the last one, you've come to the right place. And today's winner, well, today's 3rd place, Lara. 2nd place, SJD. And number 1 is Stiba. That was a new name coming right in from the left. Is that what you call it? Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Then I will stop sharing my screen, I think, somehow. Let's see if I can make that happen. I did something to my Zoom. What happened to it? Here it is. And Juliana, are you able to share your screen as well? Yeah.
Yeah. Let me share my screen with you. And let's see if everything's okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Yes, we can.
So here we go. So, hey guys, first of all, thank you for the invitation. I think it's a really nice opportunity to speak about how is our design process in OutSystems, how we work and how we deliver things. So yeah, let's go. So as you know, we were just introduced. I'm Juliana Ciarlini. I'm UX UI designer in the customer success sector in OutSystems. So I work straight with OutSystems clients to help them build their applications and other stuff. So our team works straight with clients, and we always have some challenges and challenging stuff to do together. So today, what I'm going to speak. Oh, just a second, I just saw this. So today, what I'm going to speak a little bit is about UX at OutSystems, and what about the technology? Who are the experts? What's the plan that we usually use to build and to deliver our work? What is a style guide? How to build a style guide, and how we deliver the style guide. So let's go. About the technology. So we have I don't know if you are aware of what is the OutSystems UI. So the OutSystems UI came with the OutSystems 11 came with the OutSystems UI, our UI framework for fast screen building. And what is that? So we have some building blocks to deliver great experiences really fast. So it's thanks to the OutSystems UI that we can deliver everything we design really fast. And just a second. And we have the OutSystems UI is a library, and we have a library with more than 100 patterns ready to use, from badges, progress bars, and counters to carousels and date pickers. So in this way, it's possible to build from the familiar user interactions to the most complex and rich user interfaces very easily, just fetching what you need. Also, it comes with a world-class collection of responsive web and web mobile application screen templates inspired by the world-leading applications. So with that, it's possible to address the most common enterprise application scenarios. They are easily customizable using drag and drop editor. And also it's possible to change colors and style to match your brand's design guidelines. So we have a base, we have the blocks, as we say, and then we can match with the brand and any brand guideline, color, or anything else that to give more characteristics of the brand to the application. And who are the experts that work with me? And so let me show you a bit what my team does every day. So here we have a small demonstration of what is our starting point. So we always have the OutSystems UI as our starting point, but it's a fact that technology alone cannot do everything. So we still need to customize the app to the needs of your users. So this is more or less to say that both of them combined can create a great experience. So while designing and implementing your app, don't forget your users, never. So the risks here include weak user adoption or productivity losses. For example, we have this example here from the first version of Apple Maps. As you can see, it was launched in a bit weird way. So you can see this museum in the middle of the river, or those really strange roads there. So you cannot forget how your user interact with your product. So with that in mind, you can design better stuff. You can design better applications to attend their necessities. So to do that, we develop a pragmatic approach to UX design to be applied in our Agile development projects. And this means that usually we focus on the top user stories, putting 20% of effort that will enable you to get a usable app with 80% of the results. And what is the plan? So how does this work? I don't know if everyone is aware, but we work with UX and UI combined. Both of them together, their UX and UI are they responsible to build this experience in the apps, in the platforms that we do. So user experience is the piece of the process that will draw the strategy in a sketchy way and very focused on having the right features for your users. While user interface will incorporate the brand's identity after the UX is validated. Here we have our idea is always to develop a really solid vision for your app, which will empower users and make it successful. So here in those images, we have the example of a UX and UI combined. So here we have a wireframe, and here we have the wireframe a little bit already with the brand colors and all the brand guidelines of the client. So to do such work, the UX UI team at OutSystems has a pragmatic and iterative design process based on feedback from both the business and the users. So let's see how that goes. Here we have our timeline, our usual timeline that we focus. We put the effort in the user experience. We put most of the effort in the user experience part, and not less effort, but less time in the user interface part. That's the UX and UI. And what we do in those phases and what we usually, I don't know, research or do in each one of those moments. So here, first of all, we do business analysis. So we try to identify crucial business goals, discover metrics, and inform design decisions. We try to discover everything about that world that we are entering. Then we go for a user research. So here it's possible for us to identify pain points, user needs, from interviews to observation. We have a lot of different methods to do that, but the most important is to get information there. Then with all this information and with a lot of inputs and with a lot of things already in mind, we start the wireframing phase. So what is that? The wireframing phase is the time we communicate the layout and the structure of a given website or mobile app through varying levels of fidelity. So this time we are sketching things, we are building already what we imagine that can be that application. Then we go to the user testing phase, where we try to validate the proposed path with direct feedback from users. So we go to the field, we interview users, we see how they are interacting with the prototype, and then with that we can iterate our design. Then we go to the last phase, is the UI phase, where here we incorporate the brand look and feel in the brand guidelines, and we give the look and feel to all the experience. Here we have some examples of what we do in each phase. So for example, here we have an example of information architecture that was done in the business analysis. Here we have a persona. Here we have the wireframes, and those arrows indicate that we build a prototype with that to use in our user testing sessions. And here we have a visual design applied to all these screens that were in the wireframe. A typical timeline for this process will take around 2 weeks, so 10 days more or less, where days 1 and 2 are usually for understanding the problem. Then 3 to 7 days are for exploring alternatives, iterating with the help of users and business. And then the last 3 days are to make it appealing and visually consistent with the brand. it's not super strict. Of course, we can adapt the UX phase for the business needs. Sometimes it's easier to get some information, sometimes it's not. So we always try to adapt to the reality of our client. But this is the work done by the UX UI team, right? So in the end of the day, we have some beautiful and static designs, but we need to give them life, right? We need to make them, to implement them, and to make them work. So here comes in a new team, it's the front-end team, that will create what we call the lifestyle guide. So let's see what is the lifestyle guide. So what is a style guide? So a style guide is a place where all the design guidelines, visual principles, components to build, and front-end guidelines for a specific system are set. Is the heart and soul of any design that comes to life. So here you can see a piece of our style guide for the last version of the style guide. So we have colors, code, we have a lot of stuff that we use to build the application. So it's basically something that we go to pick up the components and to build our applications. And I don't know if you remember, but in the beginning of the presentation, we talked a little bit about the OutSystems UI and what is the OutSystems UI. So in this context of the lifestyle guide. So the lifestyle guide is like the URL where your developers will fetch all the OutSystems UI patterns, screen templates, and sample pages customized to your brand. So if you go there, you can see, for example, I don't know, you have an accordion in your style guide. Then if you go to the URL, you can click, interact, see colors and everything. You can see that components that you had in a static document, you can see them live in the lifestyle guide. So yes, so to build a lifestyle guide from the UX UI process, we had the visual design. So after the UX UI days, the first days of project, we came up with the visual design and with all the strategy behind the platform. And now it's time to deliver that work to a development team. So the handover is made via InVision, where the developers can inspect all OutSystems UI patterns adapted to the brand, plus all the customized patterns that were used in the designs. And this means that development phase starts in a very smooth way. So here we have our sketch file, but to do the handover, we put in the InVision so the developers can do the inspect and can see everything they need to start implementing the work. And if you want to check, you can go to the OutSystems UI website, for example, at the resources page, and download the UI kits for Sketch or Figma to get started and to see how are our components. I don't know, just for curiosity, or if you want to get some inspiration, you can go there and see. And that's it, guys. I don't know if you could hear me well and it was clear, but that's it.
Thank you, Juliana. I think there was at least one or two questions in the chat. We might do them straight away. I can read them out.
Okay.
Is there an easy way to convert Sketch, Figma, InVision designs into the lifestyle guide without the manual steps of updating the CSS?
Maybe this is a more technical question, but usually the developers, they use our files and they can inspect everything, but they have to code and they have to do all of this to create the lifestyle guide. Without that, we just have the normal style guide. So yeah, I don't think so.
Alistair,
sharing
does that answer your question, Alistair?
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah. And there was one from Johan Andersson. Is this style guide similar to an outdoc?
Outdoc, let me see. I don't think so. I was checking. I'm not aware of the outdoc. What is an outdoc? But I think it's not the outdoc. I think it's more related to APIs and some other stuff like that. Not related exactly to the design. I don't know. I can check and I can write to you later.
Yeah, thank you. And one last from Ankit. Is there any way to convert sketch design into lifestyle without the manual step to updating the CSS?
Oh, I think this was
it's the same as it.
The first one, yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's a different question, a different person, same question. Okay,
yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Juliana.
Thank you.
That. Then Carina, I think we'll move over to you, and then just continue writing questions in the chat if you have some for Juliana, and we'll also do them towards the end. Also see Rud has entered an answer related to outdoc.
Give me a second to share my screen for everyone. Can everyone hear me just fine, by the way?
Yes, I can hear you.
Thumbs up. Great.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. And I believe you should be able to see my screen now. Is that correct too?
Yes.
Yeah. I see nodding and I hear yes. Wonderful. All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Carina Boom, and as a senior consultant at Avo Consulting, I am involved in development and maintenance projects as an OutSystems expert developer and tech lead. At Avo Consulting, which is a Norwegian management consulting company with a digital transformation and innovation focus, we have projects throughout Scandinavia, mainly Norway, and we've been an OutSystems partner for several years. We're happy to also be involved in organizing this user group with you. Many of Avo's customers are actually spread throughout Norway, and not just for OutSystems, but also for example, robotic process automation, RPA, our main other focus within Norway. And because of that, our developer capacity is, of course, also spread over our offices in Bergen and Oslo, which are several hours apart, as some of you may know. And we often have teams where one or multiple team members are, because of that, located elsewhere. So while we make sure to have regular in-person sessions with both our developers and our customers, especially during a project, in principle, we are forced to adopt remote development methodologies for many of our projects. And of course, in recent weeks, remote development has been more necessary than usual. And this is why we felt that this session becomes relevant now more than ever. So in this session on remote agile development, I aim to reflect on what we've experienced, mainly in OutSystems projects, but also from our other experiences in other fields to this end. And using these reflections and maybe some practical examples, we've aligned some useful recommendations that have helped us at least to develop applications successfully with remote teamwork, and hopefully will help you going forward as well. So our main goal in the session is to discuss what methods we've identified that help us in remote teamwork, and this will both be a reflection on the why and the how of the methods that we've successfully applied, as well as methods that we are sure that help, but often still pose a challenge, which I think is very vital to not mention any less than the ones that we know that work. And I will go through various recommendations and their benefits on each of the subjects listed, both from a developer point of view, as well as from a project manager or business dimension, to maybe give value to everyone who's attending now. So I would shortly like to take you through the contents of the talk, and by highlighting how Agile methodologies provide, in fact, a solid backbone for remote teamwork in OutSystems, making this more concrete through illustrating how to apply this in crafting a remote team collaboration plan, as well as keeping meetings relevant and collaborative and documenting processes in writing. We hope to make transparent how this can be applied to your own projects. So from there, we will move into what are also often considered challenges in such remote teamwork and how to possibly tackle these for future improvement from our perspective, such as business involvement in user engagement, testing, or onboarding of new resources. So as developers and OutSystems users, we all probably know that OutSystems is a platform that can allow development and change to move at a high speed. Making use of such a fast-paced development platform efficiently has its own requirements for teamwork, and agile, value-driven, and iterative approaches are for that reason considered to be OutSystems recommended. Traditionally, of course, many development projects for software have been done in waterfall style, where it's plan-driven, concrete plan that moved from one phase to the next, from requirements to delivery, never revisiting previous phases. And here you have the classical approach of a long design phase and a long development phase in such more original projects. Only afterward, basically, you will have a vehicle in the end. I see I skipped a slide, sorry for that. I meant to use the laser pointer. Only in the end, you will have a vehicle at the end of the project finish, basically, that you can drive, but it's often not what you expect in this long period of development. And with an agile-driven and value-driven approach, the aim is to have a working, functional product after each iteration. So starting with a skateboard, where you can at least move from A to B, even if not so fast and without navigation and without any kind of further user experience assistance there. So the user experience and user interface certainly has some desires left at this stage of the process, but at least it works and it can get you there. So it is our experience that agile methodologies also underpin how you work remotely and how to make that more efficient. And this is done by providing a structured way of working that supports fast-paced development, in my opinion, with multiple check-ins and prioritizing sessions to align everyone's expectations. Nobody will be left into the dark as to what is expected of them. And with that, accountability and flexibility of each individual team member is promoted. We found it useful to implement at minimum the mentioned aspects of agile methodology remotely, so that at least, well, depends of course on how agile a project becomes, depending on complexity, size, and of course also the wishes of who will want it developed. But having these parts of agile development implemented, so in the design phase, several vision workshops and vision document creation to help align business strategy also remotely, having remote sessions with all stakeholders, and trying to also have remote one-on-one sessions with stakeholders to align the user needs and help a remote project be planned successfully in that sense. So examples of these sessions are, for example, clarifying non-functional requirements, really defining the minimum viable product, definition of done, definition of ready, etc. So this way you structure initial requirement gathering in such a way that even remotely all vital roles are taken into account. And during the sprint, well, most of you probably are familiar with things like a daily stand-up, where you spend some 15 minutes in the day together as a team to have a time-boxed morning session to discuss the progress so far and keep an eye on what the progress is, and continuously align expectations and activities between team members and other teams and stakeholders. As a more concrete example here, when we canceled a Monday stand-up in a project because 2 team members were sick, you feel as both a developer or a tech lead that you've lost the feeling of where we are, especially remotely, more than in a normal project, when it takes more time to consider what the highest priority is in that moment due to missing team members. And on such days, without structured check-in, it's easy for project members to drift apart. And in that sense, it simplifies the whole day for a remote project team to have such sessions and at least have a sync in the morning before you start together. So basically, it avoids having wasted, for example, 2 days on something that was not really important, in fact. And in the next stand-up, when those sick team members are then back, then you really feel the power of this daily sync in the team, actually. So also for sprint planning, remotely, I think actually we found it the best to do that with the whole development team and also key project members of the business to really allow for making prioritization aligned with everyone, bringing together both business and development to ensure what needs to be prepared is picked up as action points. Of course, the sprint review and demo is kind of a given to, at the end of each iteration, show what's been done and what the goals for the next, and to reflect on the activities of the sprint. But a fixed session is, I believe, absolutely critical to the progress of remote development projects. Last but not least, often considered maybe not too necessary, a retrospective. Specifically in remote teamwork, I feel that planning in a retrospective session is more valuable than when not remote, because when you're in a project room working together on one project, you more naturally have reflection moments in a team throughout the day. But remotely, you work separately more, and moments of a conversation are generally more focused on specific tasks. So having a session to fully reflect on the activities of a sprint and how to improve it going forward is, in my opinion, as essential as any of the other meetings mentioned here. The next point, crafting a remote team collaboration plan. I feel that this is also essential to working together remotely, because by setting clear processes to follow for everyone involved in the project, responsibilities are assigned and expectations can be followed up. And this will be less challenging of an aspect to remote teamwork when you just have a small project with 2 or 3 persons. But it's relatively easy for this small group of people to sync and be aligned for activities, while for a large remote project with, say, 6 development team members, 10 business roles involved, it's an absolute vital part of the design phase of projects to create such processes to follow. So some concrete examples of such processes are trying to ensure processes to fulfill prerequisites for projects are set in motion before development. So try to ensure that at least the request for access to VPN or API endpoint authorization is set in motion so that you don't have to wait for that during development. By doing this early on, you avoid delays through unclarities and complications, for example. Using one specific tool for documenting processes, I'll come back to that still, is a way to align your project needs with the options available in these tools, basically, and ensure documentation of the processes and decisions during development. So this is the best way to align everyone's expectations as you go along. Estimates is also remotely somewhat of a challenge, because there might be different estimates than when you work in on-premise together with a project team, because people work differently remotely. And because of that, also starting early on with in-depth estimates to uncover and answer questions about complexity is quite vital. Underestimating can happen based on unknown factors there that you discover while you develop otherwise. And because it's different to develop for some people remotely than in person, it's good to also remotely make estimating a team activity, to reflect about what is the realistic time span for development for everyone involved, from the junior to the media to the senior, in that sense. There are several interactive and online methods available to do this in Agile development. For example, there's planningpoker.com, Scrum Poker, basically, to use visual estimation cards to make this more interactive with each other. It's also quite vital to invoke some project limitations in that sense, to ensure that you have the agreement that items that are only fully defined and understood by everyone can be picked up, and that prioritizing features must always align with agreed goals or milestones in a sprint, to ensure that you always work towards a common goal with the whole team and that everyone's aware of that at the beginning of the sprint. And it's also important to assign who is responsible for prioritizing the functionality, because if it's not assigned to a specific person, then there will always be new ideas coming in. And by ensuring that someone is responsible for this and may be challenged by, for example, the tech lead of the development team, you will make it clear when something extra requires more time and allows steering expectations and workflow for everyone involved. So bear with me, guys. I know that these slides are quite a bit of text, but I just want to make it also possible for you to be able to keep screenshots if you'd like. So the next point, keeping meetings relevant and collaborative, because meetings, well, face it, they're often seen as time sinks that take away time from development. But team collaboration and team cohesion, and through that productivity, is actually thought to be improved with meetings that really tackle ongoing items. And a few key points as recommendation in keeping these meetings relevant and collaborative, basically, from our experience, are setting a clear agenda, which aligns expectations for everyone invited. Advice to use video for each participant to allow visual interaction, because it is very important to try to connect with each other as a team, both development team and any other project members. They're all part of the same team. And in person, it's much easier to make this connection by looking each other in the eyes. But I have no clue, for example, how many of you are actually paying attention to what I'm saying right now. And by seeing those of you that have video, seeing those of you watch the screen, I have more of an idea of the interaction that I have with you and the personal connection I have with you. So that's actually, of course, a quite good recommendation. Of course, kind of goes without saying, being good at muting in video calls so that everyone has the right amount of focus on the subject at hand. It's quite vital to also mention to remember to have fun together while doing a project remotely. So it's quite important to try to have a good vibe in both the stand-ups that you have every day together and other meetings, because there's nothing except having fun in development, of course, and working together and learning together and teaching each other new things, for example. So a good vibe is quite vital. Mentioning positive aspects helps everyone start the day with a positive mood. So through that, you can also focus on helping concrete issues being solved when they're mentioned. If they're small, that goes even easier. It basically helps start your day off with a positive mood and not frustrated with something that the previous day did not work out at all. Especially remotely, you can easily get isolated on being stuck on something that you're working on, of course. So setting concrete action points in the stand-up also takes away impediments in that sense. Another recommendation there is kind of also supporting some off-topic discussion in open communication channels. It helps team cohesion and team cooperation by at least having some spontaneous discussion, like, for example, when you want to vent about some non-project related matters or discussing an extremely nasty bug or other spontaneous discussion. It really helps productivity because you get rid of something that you needed to have said and shared. And through that, you can focus on other things again. It's also vital that all team members see the value and relevance of each of the meetings in advance. And a lot of these aspects help. So setting a clear agenda will help to that end as well. But it would be good that, for example, if a team is not working full time or is not dependent on too much interaction because they have, for example, a day where no action for the project occurs, it may actually simply be more efficient to have a stand-up every other day. If there is then still the need to have stand-ups more often or spontaneously, then that can simply be said that it can be spontaneously arranged or planned in for the next sprint daily again, if needed. So this can be adjusted as you go with each iteration to also align with what the project needs. My next slide is about to try to default to writing. So I already shortly mentioned this, to document process and decisions. If you document all these decisions in one tool, it makes everyone aware. It enables properly differentiating between new functionality and bugs and prioritizations and why some choices will be made. And it forces you to clarify your thinking and communicate succinctly if you write your decisions also down. So what may happen, as a more concrete example, is when you do not assign one place for documenting processes, is that you post minor issues in a project chat channel, for example, on a tool like Slack, and only assign vital main functionality on a task planning tool like Azure DevOps or Jira. And then when you do a daily stand-up and just talk about what has been done without using your task planning tool, you may forget, for example, what you discussed in Slack about the minor issues, the minor bugs that you found, and what is actually important at that time to solve. So these various places for documenting creates confusion in prioritizing from everyone in the project, both developer and business, I would say. And one tool will ensure that everyone is engaged to also keep updated. So you can advise everyone to, before the stand-up, for example, shortly look over to the board if there are any impediments that need to be brought up in the items that you're working on. It becomes clear how to handle these things when you're focusing on one tool with the whole team. So some other recommendations to try to get this subject working for us was basically to agree that decisions cannot change the scope of an ongoing item. This is also an often used principle in non-remote projects, but in remote projects, there's more possibility for people to drift apart in a project. So it's more vital to agree to this beforehand, I would say. Of course, using guidelines to write new features and bug reports makes it also easier to not have too many uncertainties and assumptions that are made that will need more and more iterations as you continue your development. Always having a structure, for example, with reproduction steps, make sure that people understand what is actually being said and how you actually can look into the issue that's been reported without needing to ask questions to try to find out what's actually going wrong. And one main thing that you really need to understand here is, yes, writing is a great way to document the processes and decisions, but writing is also subjective. Misunderstandings can happen. That's why I underlined the bottom line. If you ensure that misunderstandings are avoided by trying to learn how to identify assumptions and simply question them, challenge them, until you're more and more sure there are not so many uncertainties anymore, that basically means no questions are stupid. It's better to question assumptions than to work them into the product and discover later that you're wrong, because that means double work. It's better to be early on with clarifying misunderstandings. And this needs to be clear to everyone in the project, that questions are always needed to clarify, and especially remotely to ensure that everyone is aligned there. What I've tried to do myself when I, for example, had a sprint planning session, I usually open up the task planner board, and while we're in a session and are speaking about each and every item, I try to make a comment about the actual meeting decisions that are made during the meeting, so that basically the task planning board is really the one place where all these processes and decisions are documented. And also after the meeting, everyone can then go into each user story, or if someone maybe missed the meeting, they can go in and see what was discussed. So dated comments with decisions made by both the business, and also explanations why a certain thing needs to be implemented by development this way, even though the business wanted it somewhat different, is a really good way to make everyone aware of what's been discussed. Setting objectives for a project team ensures engagement and also creates a feeling of team responsibility for the end results. And with objectives for the whole project team, you have the engagement from everyone involved, not just the development team, and you grow ownership for the project results from everyone. And especially remotely, when otherwise everyone may work independently, setting objectives aids you in creating a feeling of common team responsibility. So, for example, for growing a development team's ownership, you may implement, for example, that each team member in a project gets the responsibility over at least one feature deployment, so that everyone will know how to handle this. And ensuring that each developer knows how and gets the responsibility to write functional implementation is also a good way to have a common understanding of what is needed for implementing story. Now, taking ownership for team members not in the development team is a lot more challenging, as they are less closely involved in the progress. So this means the business side usually. And involvement of a product owner is there quite vital in this process. But of course, it is good to have more project members also involved in this process, where you can try to ensure that sprint planning allows walkthrough of things that are to be done in the upcoming sprint, to give a high level ownership for everyone involved, and that everyone knows this is what I'll be working towards. And to ensure that every non-development project member at least knows how to gather and who to talk to write acceptance criteria for features, gets them enough involved in the process of also the design phase and knowing what's really needed for a user story. That doesn't mean they have to do it always, but it's good that they're aware of how this process works and who are otherwise involved to speak to, so the necessary key roles. Ensuring as the development team, it's also quite useful to support and involve the product owner in sprint review and demo sessions at the end of each iteration, where you show developed functionality. And if the product owner gets enough detailed knowledge on what is implemented, it's great if they can actually show the value to all stakeholders, because as they are more involved with the users and in that sense the user needs, they actually have a very good way to speak the user's language and to really tell the user story on why this brings value to the users, what has been developed. So also in remote demos, that's actually been a pretty good experience that we've had. And if needed, there's a suggestion maybe to have feature handoff sessions after a development task has been completed between the developer who developed it and the business tester who will finally approve it, so that they know what's been done and how they can test it, and how the developer tried to make it testable for them. Because otherwise the business tester may feel a little in the dark on where to start on testing. Code review or pair programming is something that is often done already in many non-remote projects. But there are some recommendations here that we at least want to highlight that we know feel help in this, and what benefits they bring in also remote projects. So recommendations here are to distribute tasks evenly among developers, allotting specific time slots for working together in video call or sharing screen, for example, having checkpoint sessions or QA sessions at a specific part of the day in an agreed routine, and assigning these time slots each stand-up. So for example, every day after lunch, we have a sync so that any issues that have come up in the morning can be discussed. And also assigning time slots for looking at the solution as a whole with the whole development team before going into the final phase of the project really ensures that maintainability and understanding of all the features that have been developed is ensured for quality as well with everyone. All right, bear with me, guys. Just a few more slides. I already covered some of this. It's quite important, of course, to use the right tools for the right task. For specific activities in the project, it's important to also assign specific tools before development starts so that expectations are aligned. So specific project activities that a chosen tool can be used for is communication. So scheduled and unscheduled video meetings like Zoom, and Teams are often used, Slack as well. Project channel to have either group chat or individual chat on, and file sharing, project task and planning tools, progress tools there. I've already mentioned some of the often used tools for each of these aspects. So for project planning and progress, and for decision documenting, you will often see tools like Azure DevOps, Jira, Trello, Teams Planner, etc. And meeting structure and reporting. So there can be assigned tools also for reporting and displaying graphs and status meetings that go to the business sponsor, the one who actually makes the financial calls on the project's budget. One that's not often seen in, or not often enough seen in my opinion, is the OutSystems feedback tool, where I actually found it quite useful to integrate what the feedback that was found into new tasks that are mentioned on the board. So if there's a bug, for example, then feedback tool messages that were entered by users could easily be, by linking to the specific feedback, added to the story. And you can easily go into the feedback tool, see the screen.
Hello, everyone.
And,
Welcome back.
Navigate
Hopefully everyone here is
directly to
right on
Surface
time.
Studio to work on the bug.
I'll give you 30 seconds.
So it was actually quite a useful tool, I feel, to link to task planning, also remotely. Makes it easier to explain what's going on the screen. Now we really move into what I think are improvement points for a lot of remote teams. Business involvement and user engagement is one of the largest challenges in remote teamwork and gives a risk to project progress if not handled correctly, where scarce resources may increase lead time, for example, putting project timeline at risk. So in a development project, your project members and intended users have their own jobs, which makes it hard to schedule and prioritize time with them to ensure engagement in testing or refinement of user stories. What at least we've seen is quite useful to do to try to promote business involvement and user engagement is to involve the users in the stand-ups, aligning expectations going forward, to really allocate space in calendars in time for everyone to join meetings. And individual contact may actually help users speak for themselves remotely. In large group meetings, there will often be just a few people talking. And in one-on-one session, a user can really speak for themselves and really feel heard, rather than be limited by someone such as a budget holder constraining the conversation. And for this, flexibility in planning is key to improving involvement and motivating key project members to the importance of assigning enough time to the project in advance really helps there. It's how to motivate, that's more of the question, I think. Entering a dialogue about requirements helps also in advance to take away uncertainties rather than implementing assumptions. So these are reflections from our own perspective, and these are certainly things that we definitely would not mind input also from others on to hear maybe what your reflections have been. So if you have remarks on this, reflections on this, feel free to also bring them up in the chat, and then we'll handle them in the QA sessions. One but last slide. Closely linked to business involvement is testing and quality assurance. This is a major challenge point for many projects, both remote and otherwise. When it comes to identifying what needs to be tested, how elements should be tested, what data to test with. And there are some improvement points we have identified that may aid specifically in remote development, where working together as a development team and the business to really create realistic test cases that fulfill both positive, negative, and any possible exception in between, basically, as a flow, is the only way to ensure that possible exceptions are really handled. Without testing, you will find issues, I can guarantee that. Testing with realistic data is in that also the key. It's also important to not hesitating on iterating on user stories when some new cases are found. So in remote projects, it's very easy to grow a user story by saying, oh, we missed this test case and this functionality was not implemented. Let's add that to there. But the best in that case is to close it and create a new user story with maybe a slightly expanded story. And with that, a slightly expanded test case. And also ensuring that each developer knows they are responsible for testing that their own code has the intended result before handoff to be reviewed and accepted is quite vital. It may sound like it goes without saying, but it's something that, well, especially starting developers, when they start in a remote project, it's something that at least is good to have said and to align with everyone that is sort of a limitation that needs to happen before it is handed over for review. planning fixed periods in a sprint intended for testing is something that's useful for ensuring quality better, because this helps you ensure development does not get stuck on testing, and that development does not build on improperly tested material in the next iteration. So say assign also day 6 to 8 of a 10-day sprint, 10 work days, to acceptance testing on user stories, so that you can ensure feedback is worked into development. For ensuring that intended implementation is agreed, you should probably try to write user stories more specified at design time. Say when a user story is written and it is intended to go into sprint planning. From my experience, it's very useful that each development team member also goes into the user story and reads it, and maybe also remarks on what may be unclear to them. Because a very generic specification, like you should be able to filter on categories, can be done according to one developer's interpretation, but it may very much not be the user expectation. So this sounds a little bit like I'm starting to repeat myself, but some of these things can kind of not be said often enough, in my opinion. Well, in the last point also, a user may often not know exactly what they want to see, of course. So they might not have thought it through well enough. And if you involve the business users, so the product owner, business analyst, key users, and challenge them when the functional implementation is written of a user story, this is the idea, and this is how it's intended to be made. Does this align with your expectations? As the question to ask, basically. That gets them thinking, and that gets them reflecting already at the design phase. And it will take away probably 5 future iterations. The last point here is that we feel that onboarding of new resources is a challenge, especially after a project has already been started. And in remote projects, there's the additional complication of not sitting in the same room, being able to easily view each other's work, and through that gain all the context of the project. So some recommendations we've identified there is trying to onboard all project resources at project start, even though they might not even be part of the project in the first few sprints. So regardless of how much they will contribute, it still creates for everyone a common understanding and possibility for an early dialogue that will stop delays later on. And allowing time for actual onboarding sessions rather than just assigned reading enables prioritizing the knowledge that's most valuable for new resources to know first. So that may help them get started with specific things earlier than if they're just reading and having to prioritize themselves what's the most important. Another thing that should help, in my opinion, is scheduling shadow sessions, where a new developer can shadow the activity of a developer that's already been on the project. This will allow the new resource to really get familiar with how the project is being done and how they can adapt to their own methods. And it will also ensure that the existing developers can still spend time on intended development, and through to that limiting time spent on onboarding. Now, with that, we have come to the end of our session. So these recommendations are not foolproof, and they are, of course, always up for improvement and also for our reflection. So I hope that some of these may help you reflect on your own methodology and improvements along the way. I hand the reins over to Arjan again. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Carina. Some good advice in here. I think there were some questions in the chat. Karen, do you have an overview of that?
Yeah, there's a question from Sana here. So the decisions or notes from the meetings, would you create a task named Notes from Stand-Up Week 10? Or how do you structure or save the notes and decisions on, for example, a Jira board?
So some notes are not decisions, and they're just notes that really everyone needs to be aware of. Those I would put in just in the comment, but if there are actual action points that need to happen, so you should try to concretely identify action points together, then I would put them in tasks linked to the specific user story. And if they're not linked to the user story, then I would at least make sure that there is maybe a user story for non-feature items that you can link those action points to, those tasks to. Thank you for the question. Hope that answers it.
Looks like it.
There's
There's not a question, it seems, but a statement from Pablo that a big upside of writing, it forces us to articulate and elaborate our thoughts and ideas. And sometimes this leads to new ideas or to the solution to the issues one is describing. So the extra reflection and self-editing time it introduces to the team helps minimizing noise and confusion created by team members with a happy trigger for raising new issues.
Oh, I absolutely agree to this reflection, Pablo. Thank you for sharing. We already touched on this a little bit, that it really enables you to think about what you are going to write, what everyone else will see, and how to align with everyone in the project, and trying to make everyone else understand what you're trying to say.
And that was it for questions that are there for now.
Well, okay, guys. So I don't know if anyone else has any questions or any doubts and comments they'd like to make.
As a last remark, I see that someone in the chat says, having fun tends to be underrated, but is a key factor. Absolutely. Kudos to you for agreeing to that. That's my last remark.
Okay, guys. So I think we are about to finish the event. I just need you to answer, if you could. It really means a lot to us. This feedback survey before you leave. You have a QR code there. You just need to scan it. And just let us know what went good, what went bad, what are your thoughts, any possible improvements we might do. Just give us all, the good and the bad. And if you want to do any remarks live, please do.
Just a big thank you. I think there were some amazing sessions here tonight. Really, we've been struggling with the Agile and remote work because all of a sudden everybody's remote. So Carina, amazing session. And Juliana, I think we need more of the particular design side. I think it's a huge problem at the moment. We just don't have enough front-end development focus. Everybody's focused on a lot of the back-end stuff. So I'm particularly keen to hear more on that process as well. Katarina?
Yeah, that's really good feedback.
Yeah, nice. I don't know if some of the links that I sent you were useful, at least for a starting point or something like that. But if you want, I don't know if I can help you in other way. I can leave my email in the chat and then I can try to help you. Sorry.
Thanks. I sent you a request on LinkedIn.
Ah, nice. Okay, I'll see.
Okay.
Go.
Yeah. Well, thank you everyone for joining this first Norwegian user group. I hope that it was some good input, and it sounds like it was from your feedback, Alistair, which is great. Please give us the feedback. We can only improve And I guess and hope to see some of you joining us for the next session. And I guess there's also 2 or 3 other sessions this week. So now when everything is virtual, there's a lot of opportunity to get good input from OutSystems peers around Europe and the world, I guess.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Something positive to look forward to, I'd say.
Good. Okay, then I say thank you and good night.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Ariane.
See
Thanks,
you
Karen. Thank you all.